Last time on Speedster Creations Sonic Movie 2 review.
It doesn't matter!
I'm aware.
No money means no anime.
Sonic the Hedgehog 2 needs to be nominated for Best Visual Effects in some award show, because the CGI and animation showcased here might genuinely be some of the best I've seen in a big blockbuster movie in years. Okay, maybe I'm exaggerating a bit. Just a little. I thought the animation on Sonic in the first film was perfection, but they somehow managed to improve upon perfection so much that it makes its predecessor seem weaker by comparison. Just ignore that one Jim Carrey green screen shot. You can really see the improvements just by comparing the character models. A lot of it's subtle, but you can tell it's an improvement. Maybe it's cause as a Sonic fan I'm not used to expressive animation, but the way the characters are animated here is just so perfect. They managed to strike a great balance between trying to stay realistic in their movements, but also cartoony enough to maintain the essence and appeal of actual animated characters. I could see an animated character from another movie existing in this world, and it probably wouldn't look super out of place.
That house took me 5 years to build.
This is likely because some of the VFX teams that worked on this film, being Marza Animation and Blur Studios, have already had tons of experience with full animated films and even animating Sonic himself. Marza having worked on Unleashed and that great Lupin the First movie, and Blur having worked on Shadow in 06. I should probably mention that I'm a massive animation nerd, so I love seeing all these little advancements and techniques the visual effects teams use. And I watch Corridor Crew. I know what I'm talking about, I think. I need to keep making a big deal about the animation being so good, because at no point during the film did my brain ever consider that these animated characters were never actually there. All you have to do is compare this to what Disney and Marvel are releasing, and you can see how much more time and care has been put into this film's VFX in comparison. It makes the fact that this is almost never an issue in Sonic 2 seem so amazing to me. Like, I can only imagine how difficult it must be as an animator to balance realistic and exaggerated facial expressions in animation, particularly with these characters. A great example of the more subtle touches showcasing this is the whole scene with Tails looking back and forth between his adopted family. He seems so adorable, and yet so natural at the same time.
I can't believe you don't want to go to your own son's graduation.
It's not a graduation. He is moving from the 4th grade to the 5th grade.
It's a ceremony.
It's psychotic.
It's especially all the more impressive since the movie uses certain techniques to purposely make the characters feel animated. I love how when Knuckles is punching, they sometimes won't use regular motion blur, but instead have almost proper smear frames or multiples to convey how powerful and fast his fists are moving. Kinda like in Sonic X. Or how Sonic and the gang will leave behind a long coloured streak behind them, or even going as far as to turn into one to convey their quick movement. Oh my god, and that scene where we see the Master Emerald's backstory is just completely stylized animation, and it looks epic. It all works together to give the film the feeling and charm of an animated film, which is something that very clearly appeals to my personal tastes. Even though this next thing isn't really to do with VFX or animation, I really want to highlight how good the colour grading is. In a world where the biggest blockbuster movies seem to live in a desaturated grey dystopia, Sonic 2 is bright and colourfully varied, while still knowing when to make it darker during certain more dire scenes. Just by comparing these two shots from Sonic 1 and 2, you can see the improvement. It makes the whole movie so much more visually appealing. Speaking of being appealing, there are scenes where the CGI looks so appealing that it genuinely looks more realistic than real life. Like the shot of the labyrinth in the ocean of Sonic standing on the cliff looks so grand in scale I'm almost expecting the Disney logo to appear above it. The beach scene in particular has some great sunset lighting that makes the whole shot look so pretty. It looks like a screenshot of an Adabat night stage from Unleashed made into real life. Actually, this scene is one of my favourites when it comes to all the little details on the characters that make them feel real. Instead of listening to the great conversation about their similarities and becoming part of a family, I was looking at all the little sand particles hanging onto Sonic's fur and quills, because it's just so impressive. Although, do the sand particles not have motion blur here, or am I going insane? Even during the parts of the movie where Eggman is running through the labyrinth, the green screens are done surprisingly well, most likely because, sometimes, it wasn't a green screen. They really made an actual labyrinth set, and I think that's awesome. In fact, a lot of the sets and objects are surprisingly done practically. That cool Chaos Emerald compass? Yeah, they really made that. And I'm guessing they used wires to make Robotnik look like he's floating, even if it makes him look like a Mii character. The heavy use of practical effects combined with CG probably explains why when they do use CGI, it looks so good. This is how you combine practical and digital effects. I love it. This whole movie feels like an animated film come to life in the real world, and I couldn't be happier that this is the style they seem to be leaning into for this universe. The animators and VFX teams didn't need to give everything as much charm, quality, and personality as they've done here, but I'm massively glad they did. Having the character animation be so good is especially great, because it makes those action scenes some of the best in the entire Sonic series.
Stuntman in! And action!
The action in this movie is so good. So good, it deserves its own segment. When I first finished watching Sonic the Hedgehog 2, one of my first thoughts was that the individual clips of these scenes were definitely gonna get millions of views on YouTube. And I was right. For context, the rooftop missile chase scene from the first film somehow has 31 million views. And although that scene is awesome, there are so many amazing action-packed moments that exceeded in the sequel. Where the first film had its variety of fun moments like the car chase and Sonic running around the world, the sequel has Sonic and Knuckles being cool, wild and groovy, snowboarding away from an avalanche, Knuckles obliterating Sonic in his own home, Sonic running across the ocean to reach the Master Emerald in an intense test of courage and skill, an epic one-on-one showdown of unstoppable forces, and even one last fight against the Death Egg robot, finishing with the ultimate crescendo of a power move with Super Sonic just demolishing Eggman. Just from those quick descriptions, you can tell how much bigger in scope Sonic 2 was able to go for its action. I think the creators knew this too, with Sonic pretending to be Batman fighting crime and all, although, if you ask me, Sonic in this movie is probably a lot more like Spider-Man than Batman.
Hey! You're that guy on YouTube, right? Don't flip! Yeah!
Sonic as a franchise has always had its epic moments, whether that be story or gameplay-wise. We've had a giant chaos creature flood a city, a million-year-old Gaia monster emerging from the Earth's core, a madman blowing up the moon, with anything but urination, and the list goes on. And it's great that this movie seems to be leaning into the grand scale of the game's best action moments to really create that unique tone the Sonic series has, allowing the action in Sonic 2 to be super fun in its own way. I think part of what makes the action so thrilling and unique is all the different set pieces they use throughout the film. They're always moving to different locations that provide alternate terrains, giving each character their own strengths and weaknesses depending on the current situation. It's almost like the actual games themselves, or even Yu-Gi-Oh!, or a Tom Scott video.
I'm in Hull. I am in Morocco. I am at Disney World.
Each action set piece is also expertly woven into the story. Each set piece could have been great on their own, but without a proper story explanation to back them up, we as an audience might not have cared about them. But Sonic 2 knows not to do that. Any piece of action always serves to progress the plot. It makes each fight all the more interesting to watch, and helps to keep you invested in the outcome of these fights over the course of the runtime. For example, Sonic needing to run across the ocean isn't a simple get from point A to point B mission. He needs to conquer his fear of water, while also struggling to overcome the large waves blocking his path. Even the Knuckles invading Sonic's home scene has the Blue Devil in a state where he's off guard and more vulnerable, meaning that when Knuckles sucker punches the Blue Boy, stops his spin dash with one hand, and recreates the Sasuke choke meme,
What the?
You're gonna crash!
he manages to come across as so badass. It manages to establish Knuckles as a real threat, something that stays relevant for the whole runtime, making the outcome of each fight more unpredictable. Oh my god, how have I not talked about the final battle yet? What an amazing way to end the movie, with amazing stunt choreography for all of Sonic, Tails and Knuckles' attacks against the Badniks, pretty much everything with the gang on the tornado flying around Eggman's robot. The impressive cinematography, especially with the Avengers camera spin movement, pure serotonin right there. And the robot appearing right behind Sonic next to the bridge that he destroys is such a cool shot. I actually really like that quick moment. It's honestly a pretty cool set piece on its own. The bridge is even established at the beginning of the movie during the Good Morning Green Hills scene. And I always love seeing Sonic just mess around with Robotnik, running up trees in the middle of the battle just to taunt him. On top of that, I don't think I need to explain that Super Sonic is indeed the coolest thing I've seen in my life. The amount of pure joy I got from seeing Sonic annihilate Robotnik as Super Sonic is indescribable. The entire last 20 minutes of this movie was just me internally screaming, yeah! So it goes without saying that, yeah, it's an amazing final battle. The only way I could think to bring the action from a 10 to an 11 is maybe acknowledging how Robotnik is destroying Green Hills during the final battle, just to make the fight feel even more personal to Sonic, and even Tom and Maddie actually. Oh, wait, I lied. I have one critique. I think Sonic's fear of water could have played a larger role. Something to make him facing his fears when he decides to run across the ocean feel more like a strong emotional payoff that had been foreshadowed beforehand. Because, as it is now, his fear is only set up in that one short moment at the beginning of the movie, and is never really relevant again until this moment. But that's more of a nitpick I have with the story, and not so much the action itself. Because, like I've been saying, I love the action in this movie. It's an absolute highlight. And I just know I'm gonna be rewatching them over and over and over and over and over and over again. Gee, it's swell to finally meet her other friends. Okay. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 has a fun story, well-written characters, impressive animation, and glorious action. All things that would make a great Sonic movie by themselves. But of course, Sonic 2 goes that extra step above and beyond, and injects itself with the one thing that I think makes this movie truly special.
We have everything we need to win right here. Heart.
Yes.
This is the reason why the Sonic movies have succeeded where other video game movies have failed. You can argue about how much you like the characters or the plot of this movie, but the one thing you can't deny is that it has a ton of heart. Jeff Fowler understands that the key to making a great movie almost always comes down to having memorable characters. Specifically the relationships, interactions, and arcs they build and go through with each other throughout the film. Everything that forms the heart of a movie. Heart isn't something you can simply just write into a movie like a typical 3-act structure. You need to earn it, which is why Sonic 2 does everything in its speedy blue power to do just that. And I love it. Some of my favourite movies and franchises have a ton of heart. Lilo and Stitch immediately comes to mind, probably because I watched it recently. Instead of being a movie focused on the little blue alien escaping the evil government, it's about two sisters learning to reconnect with each other, while one of them attempts to overcome her anger issues.
You're crazy.
That plot point isn't quite resolved, but they hide a great story about family amongst all the fun action, so when the action does arrive, it's all the more impactful. Similar to what I was saying about the action connecting to the story earlier. Instead of being a non-stop chase scene, we get quieter moments of people just having fun, enjoying their lives, or simply just talking to each other. Although this doesn't seem to be progressing the main plot, it's developing the characters' relationships and personalities, which is what gives Lilo and Stitch so much heart. It's also why I like the sequel a little more, but that's not important. I mention all of this because the way Sonic 2 creates lots of heart is pretty similar to the way Stitch does it. Take the dance scene, for example. In any other family movie, this would be the part where the main characters dance to a generic pop song to either fill out the runtime, or because the screenwriter couldn't think of a better way to end the movie. It usually doesn't have a purpose beyond that. But in Sonic the Hedgehog 2, the dance scene to a generic pop song actually does have a purpose. That being to develop Sonic and Tails' friendship with each other. Tails is shown to be extremely talented, but with low confidence. And I've alluded to this earlier, but part of his arc in this film is him learning to build a sense of confidence within himself. And this dance scene contributes to just that. It also leads directly into the great talk Sonic and Tails have in the next scene, which would not have been as heartfelt as it already is without this dance scene.
I want you.
Oh, coming in hot.
I've heard some people consider this scene to not make sense because Sonic could just run and grab the map in a few seconds without anyone noticing, which, I mean, yeah, they're right, but that's not the point. The main journey of finding the Master Emerald isn't and shouldn't be the main focus 100% of the time, because seeing the characters merely interact with each other in charming ways, growing their friendship, that's what the audience will really get invested in. Sure, getting to see Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles partake in some epic high-stakes plot is super fun and memorable, but the moments that have really stuck with me and make this movie so meaningful to me are the smaller, character-driven and heartfelt moments the characters have with each other. Moments like Sonic placing a blanket over a sleeping Tails, then him returning the favour by letting Sonic use his Tails as a blanket, Longclaw's final message to Sonic being a big deal emotionally to him, Sonic and Knuckles just talking on the beach, or the whole baseball scene even. Everything in that scene just oozes heart and charm.
Ah, my victory time!
All these small moments allow you to become so much more emotionally connected to these characters, thus making the journey they go on throughout the movie so much easier to get invested in, while simultaneously making Sonic 2 so much more than just a regular forgettable action movie. This film having a ton of heart elevates it into becoming so much more than it would be otherwise, and it just makes me love this movie that much more. Another way to build the heart of your movie that I've neglected to talk about is music. And boy does Sonic the Hedgehog 2 have music. The one thing almost every piece of Sonic media has is an incredible soundtrack, and the movies are no different. The first movie's score by Tom Holkenborg was honestly pretty great, with some outstanding moments during the beginning and end of the movie. It isn't lackluster actually, thank you very much past me. So going into the second film, I was at least hoping it would be a bit more interesting than the first, or even around the same level, and that's basically what I got. A lot of it is the general epic orchestral score you'd come to expect from these type of big budget movies. It's mostly the kind where it works great in the moment, but you don't really feel the need to listen to it outside of the film. Although, saying that, there are some aspects of the score I do really like. For starters, the tracks that play during the scenes where Sonic runs across the ocean and when he transforms into Super Sonic, being Gotta Go Fast and Okay, We're Not Friends, are so good because not only are they appropriately epic and triumphant or intense and edge-of-your-seat inducing, but they're also some of the only tracks I felt could have been either orchestral renditions of actual Sonic songs or full character themes even, which is pretty much exactly what I wanted to hear. Just take a quick listen to one of them.
Oh no!
Saying that, I think if they wanted to make the score even more memorable, they could have used some more Sonic-y instruments like an electric guitar during the more action-heavy moments. Something to give the score some more personality. Even some more variety in music genres might have been effective. They give Robotnik a little rock and roll for his World Domination playlist, which I really like, but I think it would have been awesome if there were more moments where stuff like this happened. I also liked how they kept Eggman's little musical motif from the first film for a lot of the scenes, making them feel a lot more Eggman-centric, which I really like. I will always applaud a composer when they can add little character themes and motifs into the score to make their scenes feel more personal to the individual characters. Which is why I wish there were just more of these motifs for the other characters in the movie. Wouldn't it be cool if Sonic had a musical motif, similar to the way that he does in Unleashed? In the way that it constantly appears throughout the game. I think it makes Unleashed feel a lot more like its own thing when compared to other Sonic games. And I think Sonic 2 could have done something similar. He does have this little leitmotif that's occasionally heard, but it doesn't have the same impact or memorability as a full-on character theme. Wow. Speaking of game music, here's something I think a lot of people can agree with. It's a little disappointing that there's almost no real music from the games in this film. To help me explain why so many people agree with this thought, I've brought in the most reliable lawyer I know.
Hi, I'm Saul Goodman. Did you know you have rights? Sega says you do, and one of those rights is to get some actual Sonic music in your Sonic movie. This is the one aspect of the series that has yet to be lovingly represented in these films. Iconic music is part of Sonic's identity as a franchise, and it would be a crime to not showcase these tracks in some way to a wider audience.
Thank you, Mr. Goodman.
Saul Goodman.
The most we really get of any game music is a few seconds of the Drowning theme, and even then I didn't notice it until I sat down and listened to the score outside of the movie itself for this review. The way I see it, it's just a missed opportunity. A fully orchestral rendition of the Drowning theme could have been awesome. It could have been the most nerve-wracking scene in all of Sonic, allowing the audience to truly feel the weight of drowning in a way we haven't in the games, or in Kingdom Hearts' opening cutscene. But like I said, it's more of a missed opportunity than a full-on issue of the movie itself. Okay, now that I've talked about the actual score of the movie, I need to talk about the soundtrack. Because... much like the first movie soundtrack, the vocal tracks used here are all mostly licensed songs, for better or worse, and the only original song being Speed Me Up wasn't the best. Luckily, the credits song this time around is actually good. I'm talking about Stars in the Sky by Bill and Ted 3's very own Kid Cudi. Keep in mind, this is the only Kid Cudi song I've ever listened to. It's a massive improvement over Speed Me Up. Although Victor McKnight and Dream Kid 2 did make a cover of the song, which I might like better than the original.
Come see what you'll find, right?
Still would have preferred Crush 40 or even Bowling for Soup, but I understand why they're not in the movie, and it's no big deal. Wish I could say the same for the licensed songs they use. As a whole, I would say they're slightly weaker than the first film, but only slightly. Sure, you got some standout tracks like It's Tricky and Here Comes the Hot Stepper, which work great in their respective scenes. And even though it's weird it's here at all, I Shrink Therefore I Am from Ant-Man and the Wasp of all things makes Sonic's bounce bracelet attack against Knuckles one of the coolest moments in that whole fight. But then you also have Sonic and Tails channeling their inner Alvin and the Chipmunks 4 by pulling out the moves to Bruno Mars! Uptown Funk, the hottest track of 2014. And Tom's Phone plays the original Genesis Green Hill theme, because that's the only Sonic song a casual audience might recognize, I guess. And a lot of the other tracks they use that I actually like, such as Me and You, Don't Know Why, and A Summer Place, are only heard for a few seconds in their respective scenes, so they don't make much of an impact, unfortunately. My main issue is really just, it could have been better. It's clear that these movies won't be using much music from the games at this point, which isn't inherently a bad thing. It's just that when I'm thinking of possible songs for Sonic and Tails to dance to, Uptown Funk isn't exactly my first choice, if you get what I mean. Even though I've criticized the soundtrack, I still think it's pretty good overall. Its highs are excellent, but its lows are just a bit disappointing. There's big potential for a movie-scale Sonic the Hedgehog soundtrack, but I still don't think we've quite reached the level where I can say Sonic 2 has a great soundtrack to rival the quality of the games is. Judging by everything I've mentioned thus far, you can tell that the team of people who worked on this movie tried to insert as much effort as possible to make it the best it could possibly be, not just for a general audience, but for Sonic fans too. And no better does this come across than with the incredible amount of references and Easter eggs.
Can I offer you a nice egg in this trying time? Yeah, he's got an egg!
One aspect that makes Sonic 2 feel like a real Sonic movie is the inclusion of all the different Easter eggs referencing things from the franchise. Sure, the first movie had its fair share of cool Easter eggs too, but the majority of them were fairly surface level. Things like specific names on signs, a couple character poses, things like that. But Sonic the Hedgehog 2 goes further than that, with many of the references being direct recreations of iconic iconography from scenes in the games. There's still those surface level references sprinkled throughout the movie, like Agent Stone's Mean Bean Cafe and the Genesis Manual, the Splash Hill water truck, and Sonic doing the adventure pose. But the visual references are what I think really help to give this movie the feeling of what Sonic the Hedgehog as a series is all about, much more than the first film. Just off the top of my head, there's of course Sonic standing on and jumping off the building, which is reminiscent of Sonic Adventure. There's the manhole covers exploding, also from Adventure. Sonic's skateboard has the same design from the Adventure artwork. The language written on the owl statue is actually the Babylonian language from Sonic Riders, since Tyson Hesse thought it would make sense because Longclaw and Jet the Hawk are both birds. That's genius. Tyson Hesse just continues to be a god among the Sonic community. Knuckles' whole backstory is very similar to the echidnas in Adventure. Lots of Adventure references I'm noticing. There's basically the entirety of any scene involving the Labyrinth Zone, from Sonic falling down the same water slides from Sonic 1, to Sonic breathing in the water bubble for air. The drowning music is of course heard for a bit like I mentioned earlier. A ton of the traps Robotnik and Knuckles run past are directly from the original game, like the wall spears and spikes. Knuckles attempting to connect a hit on Sonic looks very similar to the way that it does in that one episode of Sonic X. Okay, the only one Knuckles should be hitting on is Rouge. And even then, like, come on. If Paramount can get Zillow, let Sonic 3 be sponsored by Tinder.
Sonic the Hedgehog, you're no match for me.
Even Sonic standing on top of the tree in the final battle has the same energy as when he does it in that same episode. Now, if you look really closely in this one shot, you can notice the Death Egg robot from the original Sonic 2. A lot of the visuals from the final battle with Sonic, Tails and Knuckles all running and fighting alongside each other gives me heavy Sonic Heroes vibes. I also noticed that Knuckles yeets Sonic at an Eggman Badnik the same way as in Heroes as well. Knuckles doing the jaw-dropping punch into Robotnik's chest, pushing out the Master Emerald, is ripped straight from the beginning of Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Freaking Super Sonic playing a role in this movie at all is peak Sonic. Even the little toe poke he does to finally beat Robotnik is taken straight from the beginning of 06. This was confirmed to be a direct reference in the movie's commentary, by the way, which you should totally watch. Even at the end of the movie, Knuckles asks if he can have grape ice cream, a fun reference to grapes being his favourite food. All that's missing is Tails asking for mint ice cream. Even during the end credits, we see a silhouette of everyone's favourite Sonic character, the Burger Man. And that is all the Easter eggs and references I could think of off the top of my head. I'd list every Easter egg in the movie since every single one of them is awesome, but I've already needlessly listed a ton, and I'm sure multiple other people have made full videos dedicated to finding them. Maybe I'll show more on screen when I get around to editing this part of the video. The only reference missing is anything related to the phrase Hachi-Machi. Let's get Hachi-Machi for Sonic Movie 3 trending sometime. I think you should understand just how well this movie incorporates the source material. So many different references to different things, big and small, from throughout Sonic's 30 plus years of living. It goes to show that the creators did do their research on the franchise. The only Easter egg that I'm glad isn't in this movie is any reference to the original design. I know yelling about it has been done to death, but I'm so glad that Jumanji Kid will never return.
Or will it?
Oh, they're laughing at me. I know that. You can't hurt my feelings if I'm in on the joke.
Oh, of course he's back now. Thank you, Chippendale Rescue Rangers, for almost redeeming everyone's favourite sleep paralysis demon. This movie doesn't just exist because a large movie company got the film rights to the character. It exists because a group of people, a group of Sonic fans, had the full intentions of making a real Sonic the Hedgehog movie. All you have to do is look at the various interviews with the director, the cast, whoever. Everyone has some history with the Sonic franchise, branching from multiple generations of people. This is something almost no other franchise can claim to have to the same degree, and I think this is clear within the movie itself, because of the care put into the Easter eggs and references in this masterpiece of a movie. All this, and everything else in this video, brings Sonic the Hedgehog 2 to a level of fun and pure joy that not many other films can achieve. For me, at least. With that being said, and without a decent transition to warrant it, it's time for my favourite part of these videos. Well, not really, but I genuinely can't think of a good transition right now. For all I know, I'm just gonna cut to the next segment in the middle of this segment. This video's already way too long, might as well make it longer. This is the time for random thoughts I have with Sonic the Hedgehog 2. No structure, all chaos. Chaos is power after all, let's begin. I love how Robotnik gets a new green colour scheme when he gets the power of the Master Emerald. At first I was a bit hesitant about the major design change, but it actually works really well. Especially since it helps with differentiating the colour schemes between the four main characters. On the topic of the Master Emerald, us Sonic Adventure fans know the whole chaos is power, power is enriched by the heart, quote the Carl says, right? If they managed to incorporate that full quote into the movie somehow, I think it might have been really cool. Robotnik already says the first part, so why not have someone say the rest? Maybe having Longclaw tell Sonic the quote during the Emerald exposition dump could have worked well. Since this movie's so bright and colourful, I think it would be cool to see it in 3D. Unlike most other movies, there's a lot of cool shots that I think would work really well with it.
Buzz, what are you doing? I'm attempting to break through to the third dimension.
That Sonic Drone Home short film that came with the digital and Blu-ray releases was pretty fun. I liked how Maddie had borrowed some books on raising adopted children. That's cute. Speaking of the Blu-ray though, it feels a little scummy how Colleen isn't credited anywhere on the film's box art. I hope Paramount uses the extra few dollars saved from excluding one of the main actresses' names on the box wisely. Now back to fun stuff. There's one part in the movie where Tom punches Randall in the face during his catfish wedding. Very funny scene. But here's the thing, Tom never actually punches him. You'd think this would be better hidden by the editing, but no. In this shot, Tom actually misses his shot on Randall, even as he moves his head to align with Tom's fist because he's too tall. They somehow managed to use the technology from Kirby and the Forgotten Land in live action. I know this is a very normal way to film a punch in movies, but I just think it's hilarious how obvious it is here once you notice it. I mentioned the possibility of Sonic Adventure 2 being the base of Sonic Movie 3 because of Shadow's introduction. I'm also pretty confident that's what's gonna happen, cause Wade literally mentions a Maria by name in one scene.
Hey, Bob! Hey, Maria, how you doing?
Is this a complete coincidence? Probably. But if not, that's awesome. Well, not for Maria, for obvious reasons. If you know, you know. The deleted scenes were interesting to watch. I can definitely see why they cut them from the movie, but it is unfortunate how Jeff Fowler's cameo, along with Stone Agent Stone, will likely never be seen by people who don't care about special features.
I've come for your soul.
I love the pixel art in the end credits, but since these movies seem to be leaning more and more into the adventure games for inspiration, I think it would be pretty cool if Sonic 3's credit sequence was to be animated with a Sonic Adventure style, janky animation and all. Please, Paramount, it would be funny! Oh my god, I just noticed while editing that they put the Barrel of Doom from Sonic 3 in the credits too. I love that. There's one shot in the movie where Sonic's shoes clip through each other. Only time it happens in the movie. I haven't seen clipping like this since Elsa's hair on Frozen. During the promotion of the Japanese release of the movie, the Paramount Japan YouTube channel uploaded a clip of the dance scene, but with the music turned all the way down so you could only hear the sound effects. I don't know why they did this, but I thought it was kinda funny. Guess they didn't want any Uptown Funk copyright claims from Bruno! I know it sounds far-fetched, but if you don't believe me, just watch. Oh yeah, and everything I've heard from the Japanese dub as a whole sounds great.
Oh my god!
And finally, if Robotnik isn't in Sonic 3 for whatever reason, don't explain his absence by saying he just disappeared or he died. Explain it by saying that Stone and Robotnik are on the honeymoon. Alright, I think I've said enough. This review has officially gone off the deep end, and I want to sleep. Time to end this stupidly long video on a movie I had way too much to say about.
Come on, let's go home! To the planet as cool and blue as me!
Wow. Turns out I had a lot more to say about this movie than I thought. And even then, I just know that after I rewatch this movie again, I'm gonna remember something I wanted to say but forgot to write into the script. Going into this video, I knew it was gonna be long, maybe around the length of my first review. What I didn't expect was this video to have a length rivaling the Evangelion elevator scene. Guess that goes to show you how much I loved this movie then, huh? I think Sonic the Hedgehog 2 somehow managed to not only improve dramatically upon its predecessor, but also managed to surprise everyone with just how amazing it truly ended up being. So amazing, it is now the highest grossing video game movie of all time in the US, and has even outsold the first film worldwide. Not to mention, it's the 4th highest grossing video game movie in the world. Does this mean the whole movie's a masterpiece with no flaws whatsoever? No, of course not. Yeah, it has a couple problems here and there, but when everything surrounding those problems is incredible, it kinda drowns those issues out. In reality, Jeff Fowler and his team on this movie managed to give us not only a great Sonic the Hedgehog story, but quite possibly the best interpretations of these characters we've seen in a while. The incredible action scenes managed to work in so many references and callbacks to the games to show they really cared about this franchise. They even managed to give Sonic the Hedgehog some actual heart, which I think was the final push this series needed to truly feel revitalized after all this time. And the Easter eggs are just plain fun. This isn't just a movie. In a way, it almost feels like the beginning of a new era for Sonic the Hedgehog as a whole, and I think that's pretty special. I love this movie, which is why I made this review, but if you disagree with me, then I'm kidding, of course. You might think I like this movie way too much, or you may even dislike the movie yourself. Whichever side you stand on doesn't matter. Everyone's opinion is valid, and I think that's awesome. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for listening to me ramble on about a blue hedgehog for so long. The Sonic the Hedgehog franchise means so much to me, so seeing it finally become relevant in mainstream media again makes me so happy. With the future Sonic Movie 3 and Knuckles series in development, Origins now out, along with Frontiers and Prime both releasing later this year, Sonic's future continues to look brighter than ever, and I couldn't be more excited to see where Jeff Fowler, Paramount, and Sega take the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise from here. With that said, now you know why Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is everything I've ever wanted.
Took it all on me, I was all alone and felt the crisis, I felt all the love, trapped inside a web, it was tied together, gets worse when I struggle. I stood there with you when that bang blew the sky, a violent storm but a beautiful sight, oh so much to see, no photo could catch it, it's why we're living this life.
Is this any way to behave?
Ah!